Zayn was having a great night. He was out with his friends at a local cafe in Islamabad, enjoying the music and the company. They had been there for a few hours when Zayn realized that he couldn't find his phone. He checked his pockets, but it wasn't there. He checked the table they were sitting at, but it wasn't there either. He even checked the bar and the bathrooms, but it was nowhere to be found. Zayn was starting to get worried. He had a lot of important information on his phone, including his work contacts, his bank accounts, and his personal photos. He didn't know what he would do if he lost it. Zayn's friend offered to use his phone to call Zayn's phone. After 2 rings, someone answered. It was a low, raspy voice. "Hello?" Zayn said. "I have your phone," the voice said. "Who is this?" Zayn asked. "You don't need to know who I am. All you need to know is that I have your phone, and I can do whatever I want with it." The voice said. "Please," Zayn said. "Just give it back." "Not so fast. First, you have to do something for me," the voice said. "What?" Zayn asked. "Come to the cafe tomorrow night at midnight. I'll be waiting for you," the voice said. The line went dead. Zayn was scared. He didn't want to go to the cafe at midnight, but didn't want the stranger to have his phone. He decided to tell his friends what had happened. They were just as scared as he was, but they agreed to go with him to the cafe the next night. Zayn and his friends arrived at the cafe. It was empty except for them. They sat down at a table and waited. A few minutes later, the stranger walked in. He was tall and thin, with long black hair and pale skin. He was wearing a black hoodie and black jeans. The stranger walked up to Zayn's table and sat down. "So, you came," the stranger said. "I had to," Zayn said. "You have my phone." "That's right, and I'm going to give it back to you, but first, I have a proposition for you," the stranger said. "What is it?" Zayn asked. "I want you to work for me," the stranger said. "I have a business proposition that could make you a lot of money, but you have to be willing to do whatever I say." "I don't know," Zayn said. "You don't have to decide right now," the stranger said. "Just think about it. I'll be in touch." The stranger stood up and walked out of the cafe. Zayn and his friends sat there for a long time, talking about what had just happened. They didn't know what to make of it. Zayn and his friends were prepared for the stranger this time. When the stranger asked Zayn to snatch a phone from someone, was a very strong man. They couldn't grab him properly, but they managed to control him. Meanwhile, the police arrived. Zayn and his friends had already called the police and set up the location and time. The police arrested Yawar and put him in jail. They also recovered all the snatched phones. A year later, Zayn moved to Lahore for his studies. One day he received a note in his university hostel room. The note was written by Yawar. It said, "I am back. I know where you are, what you do, and everything. See you soon." Zayn was extremely scared. He locked his room and didn't go out for a few days. After a few days, Zayn started receiving phone calls from strange numbers. Multiple people called him and asked for revenge for Yawar. Zayn complained to the police several times, but this time the police didn't react. They didn't even register his complaint. Zayn was starting to get desperate. He didn't know what to do. He was afraid for his life. He didn't know who these people were, or what they wanted from him. One night, Zayn was studying in his room when he heard a noise outside. He went to the window and looked out. He saw a group of men standing in the street. They were all wearing black hoodies and jeans. They looked like they were up to no good. Zayn was scared. He didn't know what to do. He thought about calling the police, but he didn't think they would believe him. He thought about running away, but he didn't know where to go. Zayn just stood there, frozen with fear. He watched as the men started to walk toward his building. They were getting closer and closer. Just when it seemed like the men were going to break into his room, Zayn heard a loud noise. It was the sound of a police car. The men turned and ran. The police car chased after them. Zayn was relieved. He didn't know how the police had found him, but he was glad they were there. He went to the police station and told them what had happened. The police took his statement and promised to investigate. A few days later, the police called Zayn. They told him that they had arrested the men who had been threatening him. The men were all members of a gang that Yawar had been involved with. Zayn was relieved. He was finally safe. He could go back to his normal life. Zayn is grateful for the second chance he has been given. He is determined to live his life to the fullest and never take anything for granted.